Have you felt overwhelmed at some point in your ARE or architecture journey? Don't worry if you have, it is totally normal. It's actually probably less normal if you haven't felt overwhelmed. I have pulled thousands of ARE candidates at this point, and the majority of people do classify the AREs as being overwhelming. And it makes sense. It's a very overwhelming time, but there are a few things that we can do to help with that overwhelm so that we can make the process a little bit more enjoyable. So that's what we're going to dive into today. Let's do it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Design, Create, Inspire with me, Bryn Young. I'm an architect here in San Diego, and I help people like you pass their architecture exams and become licensed architects. So one of the biggest things that people deal with when they're going through their exams, and one of the things that can really halt people from getting started or getting back in it or staying consistent, is being overwhelmed. And overwhelm is a really broad topic. What exactly is overwhelm? I mean, I could feel overwhelmed by a dinner choice, or I could feel overwhelmed by having to pass my next ARE, right? So overwhelm is kind of a big, broad thing. So today I want to dive into understanding kind of a little bit more about what overwhelm is and then how we can manage it. What are some tips that we can do to make it a little less overwhelming, and so that you're not constantly sitting there throwing your hands up feeling like, oh, I'm just so overwhelmed, because I know so many of us say that exact thing. So first, let's just dive into what exactly is overwhelm. There is a few different types of overwhelm. And for this, obviously, I'm going to kind of discuss it based on the exams. So the first one that I want to dive into is content overload. So when we are learning new things, it's really easy to become overwhelmed, but it means we're learning. So, when you're learning to ride a bike, it can feel really overwhelming at first because you're having to figure it all out. You're learning new things. With the exams, you're not only learning new skills, but you may be learning totally new concepts, new vocabulary, all that good stuff. So content overload can quickly become overwhelming. And this is seen even in the very beginning when you go on NCARB's resource list in the ARE handbook. Even that resource list can quickly push you into overwhelm because there is so much content in there that the idea that you have to now go in there and understand all that, be tested on that is very quickly overwhelming. So understanding that is normal, that's likely going to happen so that you can create some tools in order to manage that is super important. Now, again, we have 6 exams to take. So not only the content overload, but even just the exam overload. There is a wealth of knowledge that we need for these exams. And I would say also the thing that can quickly feel overwhelming is people who are taking these exams. You, for example, have gone through school, right? You have worked in the profession. You understand architecture, likely at a deep level. And yes, there are some people who take their exams well in school, but still, you understand architecture at a pretty deep level. And likely you're pretty passionate about it. And what can feel overwhelming is when you go in and start to learn what is on these exams and you go through the content, it can be really overwhelming that you have no idea what they're talking about in some instances, right? We often come into these exams with a lot of optimism because we love what we're doing, we're passionate, we're excited to get this next stage going, we want to be licensed, and then we get in there and it's like, what did I even go to school? Am I starting from scratch? What even is this? It's like a master's. It's like a PhD. So that can feel overwhelming because we've already done so much and now it's feeling like we have to do more from scratch. So I will let you know that yes, there's a lot of stuff on the AREs that we didn't necessarily learn in school, or maybe it was quickly brushed upon. And it makes sense because then basically school would just be about the AREs, but school's really about how do you think like an architect, how do you design, how do you work with clients, how do you give presentations, how can you create designs and then be able to speak through those designs and convey those to a client, which is critical. And that's not really what the AREs are teaching you. The AREs are teaching you the fundamentals fundamentals, how to run a business, how to run a successful project, all the different stages of that, the health, the safety, the environment, all that stuff, which of course is critical for a building, but it's almost like school is like this foundation to then get you to the Aries. So that content overload can feel quickly overwhelming. And again, we'll go through kind of some tools to help with that. But before we do, I want to just dive into two more other types of overwhelm. So the second one I want to talk about is time management. Most of us taking these exams are not just taking the exams. We're also working, we have families, we have other things going on. And so the time management aspect of balancing all of that can quickly feel overwhelming. And it's really important during this time to create priorities and make sure that you are prioritizing what is most important to you in order to alleviate some of that overwhelm for time management, because even so much as like an added lunch with a friend that you don't really even want to do, or you haven't even seen that person in 10 years, even that can quickly throw you into overwhelm for time management. So just be aware of that. Again, there's tools that we can work on for time management to alleviate that a little bit. The next one is test anxiety. This is a huge one. There's a lot of pressure to pass and to do well on these exams because it means the next stage of our career. It may mean a increase in salary. It may mean a totally different job position. It may mean quitting your job and going off and starting your own architecture firm. So there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves, that our employers possibly put on us, that other peers put on us, and then possibly family that put on us as well. So that in itself, that test anxiety can quickly feel overwhelming. And so that is a different sort of overwhelm. It's more of an emotional overwhelm. And a lot of times our brain is doing our best to protect ourselves at all times. And so if our brain perceives a threat of any kind, then it will shut down. And so if we start looking at the exam as a threat because we might not pass, it's emotionally overwhelming, then our brain is going to start shutting off and procrastinating and avoiding taking the exams, avoiding that feeling and avoiding that situation that's going to put us in an uncomfortable position. And so having that anxiety around the test, having that added pressure can quickly turn us into overwhelm, which can lead to burnout. So it's really important to manage test anxiety and manage the pressure that we ourselves put on us and the pressure that the outside forces are putting on us as well. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies, because yes, it's important to know what is wrong or why we're having these issues, but it's more important to know what are some strategies that can help us so that we can prevent being overwhelmed, prevent the chaos of it all, and do amazing. Okay, so first let's talk about the overwhelm of the content. Learning new topics. This, again, with everything is overwhelming in itself because we're having to learn new topics, understand them, learn new vocabulary, and then really retain that information and understand it from a deep level. And that doesn't happen overnight, and it's really important to remember that. It doesn't happen overnight. So let's talk about some 3 things that you can do. Let's first break it down. When we are looking at a huge, broad picture, that's when it's overwhelming. If you're looking at all 6 exams at once, that's insane. That is so much information. Of course, you are going to be overwhelmed. If you are looking at an entire ARE resource guide that has every single book resource on it, you're going to be overwhelmed. So break it out, chunk it out into smaller sections so that it feels manageable and that it is manageable. If you don't have my ARE resource guide, I highly recommend it. It's a free download. There will be a link below. I'll also put a link up here. And this is essentially like the NCARB's resource list, where I do have all 6 exams on there. It shows which resource to use for which exam. Plus, it's not every single resource. So yes, I don't have every resource that is on NCARB's recommended list. That is what worked for me. That is what has worked for many people who have used my recommendations. That is how I prevented overwhelm and how I managed it all. If you feel more comfortable making sure you go through every resource on NCARB's list, that is your choice. Just know that there is a lot on there that maybe you only need to read a page of, or maybe you only need to understand what the book's about. But if you are going into it thinking and trying to read every resource, you're going to get overwhelmed. It'll take you forever and you'll probably give up because it just doesn't feel feasible. It's a lot harder to get deep deep understanding and knowledge of 1,000 different things versus narrowing it down to 100 different things and really knowing those intricately. And it's not 1,000 and 100, but you know what I mean. Okay, the next is set realistic goals. So when we have a huge monumental thing like 6 exams, that again can feel overwhelming. And if we're trying to put a really tight schedule on ourselves for that, we're really just creating unneeded overwhelm for ourselves by creating these really tight expectations. So set realistic goals. And part of that is include fails in your goals. Include random stuff happening in your life that makes you postpone an exam possibly. Don't do that all the time. I'm a high believer of not rescheduling, but once in a while you might have something come up. These exams typically take 2.1 years to go through. Think of the last 2 years of your life. What kind of stuff happened? We went through a pandemic. That was unexpected. I had a baby. That wasn't totally unexpected, but also maybe something I hadn't been planning for 2 years. I started a new job. Like there's so many things. I'm sure you started a new job. There's so many things that happen if you think about the last 2 years. And so think of that in relation to the exams. If you go in with really tight rigor of I'm getting it done exactly this way, and you have these really, really high expectations on yourself, then it's gonna really constrain you. So set realistic goals. That's huge. Okay, and then also find your learning style. If you are taking these exams, you're going through the study process, and you're just willy-nilly going about it, then it's going to take longer and it's going to be less efficient. So you want to make sure you're studying specifically for what works for you so that you're retaining the information really well. I have a free quiz that it's like 60 seconds. I think there's maybe 7 questions, and it will help tell you what personality you are for these exams so you can help tailor it. So whether that looks like reading textbooks, listening to audio, watching videos, joining study groups, those are different study methods for different learning types that work really well for some people. You might work really well in a study group, and Jen next door might work really well in a quiet room by herself. So it's important to understand those different parameters so you can optimize it. So go take that quiz. And then when you take the quiz, I give you a little like report based on your personality that gives you tips, study environment, great tools, different study resources based on that. So definitely go take it. I do that to help you make your life a little bit easier and a little bit more efficient. So those are the 3 things that I recommend for when you're learning new concepts. Break it down into manageable chunks so you're not looking at the huge full picture. Be realistic, set realistic goals. Be careful about the expectations you put on yourself. We can't control the expectations that others put on us. We can control the expectations we put on ourselves and the information we share with others and how we interpret the expectations others put on us. So, AKA, we only can control ourselves. So make sure you are setting realistic goals for you. Okay, and then just learning your learning style, your personality, so that you are able to digest that breadth of content in a manageable way. Okay, the next thing I want to dive into that is huge for preventing overwhelm is proper planning. Put together a proper plan. This is huge. This will help you with literally like every type of overwhelm because you are planning. You're not just on a whim, oh, today maybe I'll study this. You know, when you have a proper plan, you know what that day's study session is like. You know that tomorrow you don't have to study because you've created a free day. There's no pressure. It's all good. You know that you have XYZ coming up and you're gonna take it a little bit slower that day. So put together a proper plan so that it is enjoyable and consistent. It all comes back to that. When we're overwhelmed, when we're burnt out, all that stuff, we end up not being consistent. And consistency is the best thing to get through the exams. And I want to highlight this important misnomer. A lot of people think consistency means every day or very, very rigorous every day. Consistency means knowing that we all have different energy cycles and that some days you might be energized and some days days you're not. And it's about finding out what that rhythm is specifically for you so you can actually create a study plan surrounding your specific energy. So what that means is no, consistency isn't every single day you are studying. It doesn't even mean every single weekday you're studying. It means you are looking specifically at a overview, say 6 weeks, and you are looking at what your energy cycles are, what your patterns are, and now you're creating a plan for that. So that may mean 3 days you're not studying, 4 days maybe you're not even studying, and then you have really a lot of energy these 3 or 4 days, so you're going to actually go a little bit harder that day. And then creating this plan, and that's the consistency. So what's consistent for her is maybe totally different for him. So consistency, again, this is a huge one that people hear all the time, that consistency, you hit your goals. Consistency is what needed to, be successful. I think that people don't understand what exactly that consistency means, because if you look at it in that way, it's a lot easier to stay consistent, because if you do take a day off, you're not beating yourself up about it. So how do you find out what those energy cycles are? I dive deep into this inside the Ultimate Study Plan. So the Ultimate Study Plan, a lot of people think it's just like a 6-week, here's what to study each week. It is that. And that's what I think a lot of people come in for. They're like, oh yeah, I want to know exactly what to study each week, and I want to be able to take and pass my exams in 6 weeks. That is what you will get inside the Ultimate Study Plan. And you also get this deep information on how to create that optimal plan specifically for you, based on your energy, based on your schedule, based on your life. And I don't talk about that much, because I think, I try to tell people what they want with the plan. But to be honest, the Ultimate Study Plan, yes, it's about the 6-week plan, but it is really about figuring out how to best harness your specific energy so that you stay consistent and you hit crazy goals, and without guilt. Because very often, if we don't have this understanding of ourselves, then we can really easily go into like a guilt spiral if we're taking a day off, or if we're not studying for 3 days, or maybe even a week, and then we feel like we need to reschedule our exam, all that stuff. Anyways, I digress. I didn't even plan to kind of plug that right here, but I think it's so critical for people to understand that that's what consistency means, and that's what creating a proper schedule and study plan looks like. So go get in the Ultimate Study Plan now. You can purchase the individual 6-week study, just like breakdown per exam, which is helpful. But if you want the whole background, I have a whole interactive study planner where you actually go in after you've gone through all the energy cycles and figured out what works specifically for you. Then you go into this interactive planner, plan it all out in correspondence with the 6-week breakdown that I give you. But it's more about taking that 6-week breakdown and then putting it actually on a schedule and actually on a plan that works for you. So that's what the whole USP course is. But you can purchase the individual plans too if you want, although again, highly recommend the full thing. Anyways, okay, so when we're creating a specific plan, we're creating a study schedule. So again, this is each day, each week, you are knowing exactly what your responsibilities are for studying, whether it's studying or not studying, whether it's 10 minutes or 3 hours. You have a specific study schedule to help you prevent that overwhelm. I will tell you, when you have 6 big textbooks sitting out on your desk, and every day you're walking by and you're seeing those, and you don't have a specific plan or a schedule for breaking into them, you are going to feel overwhelmed. That's just how it happens. So when you have a plan and a schedule, you know what topic maybe, for example, you're focusing on that week or that day, then you can quickly go in there and get to it. Now, I'm not going to lie. There may be days where you still don't want to get in there. It's like working out. I have a workout schedule that I have, and my alarm will go off and be like, ugh, So that will happen. When that happens, tell yourself, I will do 10 minutes only. Set an alarm, do the 10 minutes. You're still hitting your schedule. You're still hitting your goal, but you may not be doing it as long, but you're still getting in there and you're creating that consistency, which is creating that habit. 2, prioritize your study topics. So when you are breaking down your study plan, focus on what topics are needed. So again, going back to that content overwhelm, there's so much information that if you break it out per topic, even if it's like section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, you know how the exams are broken out, or even more micro where you're literally like, today I'm doing foundations, next week I'm doing code, whatever it needs to be, break it down so that it's manageable. So if I'm focusing this week on structural members, I'm not also having to worry about waterproofing, or I don't know. And it doesn't mean you can't like jump around too. That might work well for you, but create some sort of plan so that you can focus and place your attention more in one area. And again, this is what we do in the 6-week plan that I give you. That is broken out in sections and topics. So there will be week 1 is going to be a certain section, and then based on that, you'll read or review certain chapters of certain books. So we're not ever sitting down and reading from page 1 to page 300. We're going around and skipping around. So that's what the Ultimate Study Plan individual plans are. Okay, and then the last thing, with a proper plan, take care of yourself. Make sure that inside that plan, you have your self-care in there. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not healthy, if we're not feeling good, if we frankly feel like shit, then our brain is gonna feel like shit. And then we're not gonna wanna go take it, or we're gonna take it and we're just gonna be overwhelmed. If you're constantly thinking about what happened at work or fighting with your spouse and you drank too much wine last night, then, like it's gonna compound. And I'm no saint, there's nights where I drink too much wine, but at the same time, it's about prioritizing your health and yourself during this time of your exams. So make sure that when you're putting together this plan, you're also including your health and wellness and mental health too. So that might be meditation, yoga, going for a walk, watching comedy even, So incorporate those things so that you're not feeling guilty as you're going through your rigorous study sessions, okay? So those are some awesome tips to help you with overwhelm. I do want to say too that I have a program called Mind Over ARE. It's a bit more intensive from the Ultimate Study Plan. The Ultimate Study Plan is basically a snip of Mind Over ARE. And inside Mind Over ARE, I really dive deep into the mental health side of things. So really give you strategies to make your exam day just another day and to make your study sessions enjoyable, to optimize them, the different things you can do to really make it a less heightened pressure experience. And inside Mind Over ARE, we have people who have literally been spending years trying to pass these exams. And then they will take Mind Over ARE, and we have had people who are literally midway through the program, not even finished, who then go in there and pass these exams. And they're just mind blown. So critical life skills and strategies that are inside Mind Over ARE. I'm so proud and passionate about this program. So if you're watching this live, we have an independent study version that is available. We also have a group coaching program that is only open a few times a year. I am actually changing up the way that this is structured. So if you are watching this live, go get inside the independent study version right now and be aware that in the next couple months, I'm going to be releasing brand new information for this program so that we can meet more often. You'll have access to me more often than just quarterly. And I guess I didn't realize I was going to be announcing this here, but let's do it. I have realized that quarterly groups are just not enough. And I want to help more people, and I want to help people when they need it, not just quarterly when it works for our groups. So Mind Over ARE is only going to get better. It's still going to be, it's an amazing program. And also there will be options for group study sessions, for coaching, for monthly meetups, for community, for just a really incredible environment, because that is what is so powerful for this, for implementing all of the items that you learn inside Mind Over ARE. So keep an eye out for that. If you are watching this later, then just check out the link below and you'll be able to see all the good news and exciting ways that you can get involved. So definitely go in there. Again, you can join the independent study version now, and then in the next couple months, we'll be releasing all the new updates. Okay. So that is overwhelm. That is the strategies that you can deal with it. I hope that you can implement some of these changes so that you can feel good when you're taking these exams. This is a long time to take these exams. Some finish quicker, some finish longer, but it is a big, important stage of your life. It's also a stage of your life when you are doing other big things. So we need to make sure we are approaching this with a full holistic approach so that we can be healthy and enjoyable and pass and become licensed architects and reach our goals. So that is what is so critical. So let me know below if you have felt overwhelmed. I'm sure you have. And if you've tried any of these things. Or what makes you feel the most overwhelmed? Let's just have a dialogue. I think it's so important that more people read and see, hey, I'm not the only one that is freaking out about this. I'm not the only one totally overwhelmed. It's important that we have that community. And speaking of community, I'll also leave a link below. We have a free ARE group community where we all hang out and talk about these amazing positive things. And I want you to be a part of it. So all these different links, so much different information, I'll leave it below. But definitely, if you just want to get started, download the ARE resource guide for free and the free quiz. That's like your first stepping point. Your next stepping point, get inside the ultimate study plan. Your next stepping point, get inside Mind Over ARE. So there's all your to-dos. Oh, and also, of course, the community. So that's your first step. So there you go. That's your action to-do list. And I'm so excited to hear your takeaways, your breakthroughs. I want to hear all about your exam process. I love seeing all the comments and the DMs that I get from people just like you who are passing, which is amazing. So thank you again. I'll see you next week. And in the meantime, if you want to do a deep dive, go check out this video next. All right. Have a good one.